This is National Chess Master Rats at chess.com, and I'm here to continue my video blog on the team match between the Army of Brotherhood and my video lessons group. And the match score now is 30.5 to 23.5 in favor of the Army. It was tied 23.5 earlier today, and some of these forfeits I was talking about came through, and a few of our teammates, my teammates, resigned. So I won't get all the video or all the games covered, but this time I'm going to get some that have been sitting for a while, like this result up here on board 2. Let's see, not that one, we want this one. Okay, uh, Rich Costa is a national master from where I grew up. I've seen him around for years. We don't even know each other. It's kind of funny. We never had the pleasure to play. So we have a lot of friends in common, but we don't really know each other. But I'm happy he's part of the team, and he's done well on this first board. And it's a pretty interesting little game, and hopefully as I can provide some instructional value as well as some tidbits. But the main prevalent theme seems to be that players are not taking their time um, and are messing their games up as a result. Now this is all book. It's the Alpine Sicilian, C3 Sicilian. White will accept an isolated queen pawn, and I don't know where it leaves book. I don't care. That's your job. You need to learn these things, and a good way to learn openings is when you play them. Play them online, and you can look them up and learn them as you go. But white accepts an isolated queen pawn, and I think maybe black castling queenside is a little premature here. Let's talk about the position for a moment. Okay, white has an isolated queen pawn. Now that doesn't mean that white is losing by any stretch of the imagination. What you need to be able to do if you accept these isolated queen pawns is know how to play the position from both sides of the board. In other words, what are the objectives for a lot of free development and mobility for his pieces. If you notice, both the white bishops, even though they haven't developed yet, they both have very nice open diagonals. So they're going to come out into the game pretty quick. At the same time, white hopes to eventually exert some pressure on both the E file and the C file. These are open for rooks, and the rooks have some open lines. And if black's playing for a win, what black wants to do is blockade this pawn. Now, right now it's blockaded by a queen, but what you want is a knight there, and it takes a little bit of maneuvering to do it. But black should be striving to play to get a pawn on E6 and a knight on D5. Ideally, it would be great if you had a knight on F6 and D5, and that's going to take a little work, but it can be done. Most likely. Now, the basic rule of thumb with the isolated pawn is 3 steps if you're defending against it. You want to restrain it, blockade it, and then destroy it. Now, if you're successful, oftentimes it takes 30, 40 moves between step 2 and 3 to blockade and destroy. It often doesn't fall until the end game. But if you possess the isolated pawn, you really want to advance it up to D5. If white can do that, white's doing pretty well, because that will really cramp the black position. And this is just based on years and years of experience of master games, and these are pretty much known things. Now, an alternative strategy is win with white, draw with black. Okay, now obviously you can't get white can't win at the same time as black's drawing, so black is going to elect a strategy, it appears to be, to try to draw the game, but he outwits himself, and we'll see that in a moment. Okay, so I think would have been better for black to have castled kingside. This black king could come under fire on the C file in a little bit, but not the way that black plays it. White continues his development. Now, black says, you know what? I realize I could play for a win against your isolated pawn, but I'm not going to. I'm going to play to equalize. And really, white doesn't have much choice here. White pretty much needs to take. And I'm going to show you how black outwits himself, and then we will come back and examine, because I didn't bring up the analysis board yet. My fault. I'll just play through the game. But here's where black goes wrong. He plays a little trick. Here he's counting on knight takes fe5 and then pinning the knight and winning the piece back. Okay, and that's fine if white just sits there and does nothing, but white has resources. You know, if you play f4 or bishop f4, f6 is going to win the knight back. Instead, white starts to activate his pieces, and he plays knight c4. Now that guards the knight, and we'll see how this makes a difference in just a moment. And we'll come back and examine an alternative b5, but black goes through with his plan of f6, and now comes a little surprise. Bishop a4. Now if the rook vacates the the e file, if it goes back to d8, white just simply retreats his knight on e5 and he's a piece ahead. If the rook goes forward to e7, then well, I'll come back and show that in a minute. Let me just show you what happened. Black chose to give up the rook on e5 because if he doesn't, well, it's just an alternative line. You'll see. He chose to do this, but unfortunately, this costs black material. He's down a rook for a knight, the exchange, or the quality as it's known in Europe, and they play a few more moves, and then black realizes in the long run he's going to lose this game, and he resigns. So, as I said, black did outwit himself. I'll show the correct way here in a bit. Let's back it up and look at those alternatives. After knight c4, okay, bishop a4. If black plays rook e6, if we keep, there we go. If he plays rook e6, wait a minute, something's wrong. No, f6. Okay, right. f6, bishop a4. Yeah, that's right. Okay, now if he plays rook e6, he runs into a bishop d7 check and trouble. Okay, king moves. Take the rook, and here white's up not up a whole rook, but he's still winning the exchange. You could just leave the knight there, castle, and get a pawn for it, right? Or protect the knight again with bishop f4. I mean, there's a number of good moves, but rook e6 will not save black. What about rook e7? Let's have a look at that. Come on, there, it was lagging. Okay. Rook e7, the problem is knight d6 check. And when the king moves, where do you want to put it? Let's put it on b8, get him out of the way. I got lag. I heard the click, but it didn't move. Okay, I've got lag. There it goes. White just picks up the bishop here, and after rook takes check, white just retreats the knight, and white's a piece ahead. So that doesn't work. Now, one possibility that ran through my mind is, you see, these knights are self-protecting. If you can attack one and drive it away, the other one's loose. And b5, at first glance, seems to do that. But the problem is, white just castles. He gets his king out of the. Okay, look at this lag. Look, watching that. There it goes. Didn't castle. The moment black regains his piece, knight takes f7. And even if black wins this knight that's going to capture the rook, in the long run he's going to be down the exchange once again. So what are the alternatives? Well, if you guard f6 or f7 with bishop e6, you're no longer attacking the knight on e5. And if you guard the bishop or the f7 with the bishop on g6, white takes it and then saves the knight. So what does that leave? Well, knight h6, and then white just rips it off the board. And let's see, pawn takes. See, for the moment, white's ahead a piece. Okay, and no matter how black plays it, he's going to be down material. And here he's down an entire rook. Even if he wins that knight, he's still in trouble. So essentially, like I say, black has outwitted himself, getting careful here now, or trying to be cute. You see, he sacrificed a piece for a pawn, but there was a correct way to do it. See, the whole theme was to play knight takes e5. Well, don't do it on this move. Play bishop check first. Now, let's discuss white's alternatives. Well, the first first one that'll come to mind is let's just move the king, even if it's not the first one to come to mind. Let's show why this is not a good idea. Okay, white has lost castling privileges. His rook on h1 is going to be a spectator. And for all we know, black may just come in here and check him again, and white's kind of like in a little bit of a pickle here. Even though he's ahead of pawn, he's not going to be able to keep it. Black's got free development. He'll just move knight g7, knight g6, rook fe8. He'll collect that pawn in short order, and white's kind of tangled up. So we dispense with that. Let's look at bishop here. Well, we have bishop takes, knight takes, and now it's safe for black to regain the pawn. And what's happening here? Well, you basically have an even game. The pawn structure is entirely symmetrical, so it wouldn't surprise me if both players played a couple of moves and shook hands and called it a draw. I don't see how either side can win this without a horrible blunder on the part of the opponent. Now, at this position, black's even got a threat. Knight d3, check, winning a pawn. So white's gonna have to cover that in some way. He can't castle. He'll drop the knight on d2. So what about bishop e2? Well, if black wants, he can pick up the bishop pair. Now white can't castle, and in some respects, if black can trade off rooks and one set of knights, black should win this. So let's try to find a move for white. What can white do here? Let's see. Knight c4 will secure the b2 square, but you can give a check, and king f1, the king's displaced. King e2. This might work. There's a rook check that's a nuisance. I think black's got the better part of it, and there may be more that I'm missing, but this just kind of gives you an idea. If you just sit down and look at the position for a couple of minutes instead of just seeing your reply, looking at the board and making a move, you won't lose this game. So there's no excuse for losing an online game quickly in electronic postal chess. In my opinion, there's no excuse for it. Okay. And too many people are playing too quick. I'm trying to educate the world how to play slow, and take their time, but it's an uphill battle. The internet has truly changed chess, and it's sped it up, and it's not helping you. Okay, now the next couple of games are, let me find them. I'm going to skip some games because I want to show, let's see, this, let me find it. I know which one it is, I just don't remember what board it's on. I'm going to go through two other games here, at least. Got to find the game. There's so many games, and while we're doing it, just a random peek, we see some games that are barely started. Well, this one's moving. Well, that one's over. This one's move 6, 7. This one's about move 10. About move 10 again. Okay, let's see. I think this is the game. No. Let's see. Is this it? Yeah, this is it. Okay. This is, I think this one will be pretty instructional, and white made a lot of mistakes. If you look at this position, look what's happened. White's queen is gone. It's pinned. So 16 moves. How did something like this happen? If you're new to this kind of chess, this one game will help you a lot, because white makes a lot of mistakes. Okay, everything's fine so far. White's developing his pieces, but white commits two back-to-back mistakes. Now, in English descriptive notation, that's the notation I learned. White's next move is what they call pawn to queen rook 3, or shortened pawn to rook 3. We call it queen rook 3 because the other pawn can move to rook 3. Now, English descriptive is antiquated. Hardly anybody uses it, but a lot of old, that's what I learned off of, and a lot of old books, chess books use it. So there's a wealth of chess literature available if you know the notation. And one advantage it actually has is it identifies squares a little better because it identifies them from both sides of the board. This is black's queen rook 6 square, where in algebraic it has one name, a3. But the purpose of these pawn to rook 3 moves that I see countless low-rated players do is to keep pieces out of the knight 5 squares. Now, black wasn't really threatening to put something there, and even if he does, it's something white can deal with rather easily, and I've demonstrated this in past videos before. All these moves do is they spend 2 tempos and they weaken the pawn structure. If white eventually castles kingside, his pawn structure on his kingside is weaker. There's potential sacrifices on h3. The square g3 can come into fire if black controls the diagonal a7 to g8 with a queen or a bishop, because the pawn on f2 would be pinned. See, the defensive power of a pinned piece is purely imaginary. Okay? So, but white's not done making mistakes. And I tutor a number of people at all rating levels, and I've got a brother and a sister that I work with together every week. And they're down, 11, 1200 range, and that's who's usually they play. And almost every game that I look at with them, this is what their opponents are doing. They're pushing their rook pawns up here without fail, and we laugh about it. Now, what I tell them to do is bust the position open. When they start wasting time with this, break that position open, and your development advantage will come through. Well, black doesn't really get a development advantage here. But let's just see what happens, how white continues to misplay this. Okay, so far, aside from those pawn to rook 3 moves, white's done fine. He's developing his pieces, okay? But here, white commits his first mistake. Well, not his first mistake. He's made 2 dubious moves, a3 and h3. But what white needs to do is play bishop d3 and get castled. That's what white needs to do. Instead, white moves a piece a second time in the opening. There was no need for this, okay? Because you're leaving your men at home back here that need to get in the game. And if you want to attack your opponent, that's one less piece you have to attack with, okay? Think about it that way. And white decides he doesn't want to lose a bishop for a knight, so he brings it back. And now black has a clear-cut plan. Black wants to play e5 and get a nice pawn center, okay? And white reacts illogically here, to say the least, because he's not doing the number one thing he needs to do, and that's develop. Okay, well, you can argue with me and say that's a developing move, but usually you want your minor pieces out and get castled before you move your queen, and then you just move your queen so your rooks are connected. Okay, so this has 2 ideas. Number one is to capture the pawn on e6. Well, black will see that. And number 2 is to try to set up some mating threats on g7 with bishop h6. And another great teacher, Dan Heisman, has something he calls hope chess. He has his own definition for it. I have my definition of hope chess. Here, white's hoping black won't see the free pawn. And you're hoping your opponent does exactly what you want him to do. But if your opponent's any good, he's going to see, and he's not going to fall into what you want him to go for. So black does exactly what he should. He opens, expands in the center, and here white commits another error. He goes and threatens a mate, and that's easy to see. Okay, you're not going to win games like this unless the person is absolutely brand new to chess and somehow got this position. But if you've got a rating over 1200 in online chess, you probably are going to see the mate threat. And now I guess white suddenly realizes maybe something's gone wrong here. And here's a question: when you put a piece out to dry like that, you hang it out there, where's that bishop go next? Black actually has a threat, and the threat is to park his king in the corner, and suddenly that bishop is going to be lost. So uh, White has gotten himself in this pickle because he didn't develop his pieces. So he starts trying to make flight squares for his bishop, and this is an error. Well, maybe it's the best move. We'll talk about it in just a moment. But what I mean by an error is now, uh, by White making this exchange, suddenly this bishop on e7 has a whole new diagonal at his disposal. And if you remember the final position, uh, then Black used that diagonal. So White's causing his own demise. He's making moves that cause his own demise. So White tries to create an outpost or square that bishop can go to, and he plays f4. And then after pawn takes, White takes back with the queen. I'm sorry, with the bishop. Now the bishop's safe. But look, this bishop's still on d3, and White hasn't castled. Now, at this time, White should be thinking about castling queenside, but he doesn't get a chance. All along, because of these open lines, Black's had a discovery. In other words, this knight moves and attacks the queen. So Black moves it, and White realizes his queen's loose, and he doesn't react well. He needs to put the queen... where does he put the queen safely? Maybe h5. If he puts it on e2, it blocks his bishop, but White commits another blunder, and suddenly the queen is lost. And so White brought this on himself. His bishop's still on f1. It never developed. But let's try to find a better move. See, one drawback with taking the pawn on f4 with the bishop is another thing I didn't mention, is White's leaving himself with an isolated pawn. That's a weakness. Maybe what White needed to do was take with the pawn, okay? If he takes with the pawn, then he's got an exit square for his bishop. Now, I like Black's game. Aside from the fact that Black can develop his knight at any time, improve its position and gain a tempo on the White queen, just for the sake of illustration, let's play king h8 and put the question to this bishop. I just want to show you one alternative. After this, no matter how White retakes with the pawn or with the queen, he's going to have doubled pawns, and Black will have a pawn majority on the queen side. So this game is already turning in White's favor, or Black's favor. So clearly, White's strategy of bishop h6 with a one-move mate threat was incorrect. But let's come back just a moment. A couple of moves. At the point when Black played f6, what I was suggesting was bishop d3. Okay, let's go ahead and do e4. Now let's not take. Let's not open up lines for Black's pieces. Now suddenly e4. Well, we didn't have to put the bishop on d3, but I'm doing this for a reason. Okay. What does Black really have here? Well, he's got a little bit of space advantage. He's on the king side. He can play f5, which shuts his own bishop in. He's getting ready for an f4 break. He's not ready for it now, but he's getting ready. But look at a couple things. White has a nice diagonal for his bishop on h2. Even the bishop on e2 is providing a little help. White could consider queen d2 and castle long, and we get a war where Black is going to try to launch an attack on the queen side, where White will try to do one on the king side. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities. Now, if you don't want to put the bishop on, lose that tempo, the bishop could just go to e2, and what's Black going to do? Well, he probably will play e4, because his knight doesn't really have a move. We can go out about our business, then f5, and White could even consider castling kingside and dare Black to prove something, or go ahead and leave the king in the center for a moment and think about trying to get a c4 break in. But it's a game of chess. There's no way to tell what would happen in this position. There's no way whatsoever to tell. But one thing is for certain, White's not going to lose this game quickly as he did in the real game if he just develops his pieces. And the other thing that sits is the fact that these two pawns are sitting there on a3 and h3, and black never played to try to occupy them, and never would have been able to occupy them. So uh, white could have been had these pawns back here. The bishop would be on g3, and white could castle queen, have the tempo castling queenside, and be ready to throw a thrust of g4 at black here. Let's burn two moves, even though I can't. Let's see, whose move is it? Even though I can't take those rook pawns back, uh, I'm giving white two moves. Basically we reach a position like this, and white's ready to start attacking the black king. Naturally these pawns well, I guess he doesn't have g4, and the bishop would be there, but the bishop could go to f5 or f4 and be ready for g4. So I'm just saying, white wasting two moves did not help his game at all, and it led to his demise. Okay, so much for that game. Good game by El Criolito. He understood what to do, and better luck next time for white. Let's go back to the match list. See what else I can cover. Okay, so we got two games. I think I'll do one more. And okay, we had two timeouts there. Okay, these were the two draws. We covered those. Let's see what comes up next on the highest board possible. Okay, two forfeit wins here. Banned for cheating, apparently. See that little icon right there? Okay. Not seeing any result. Here we're getting some. Okay, we didn't cover these. It seems like white just abandoned these games. He wasn't banned for cheating. He just resigned them. Let's see if there's anything. And his account is closed, by the way. So it wasn't banned for cheating. He, I guess, just got tired. Let's run through it anyway. King's Gambit. Okay, now here I'm talking about don't play moves like this. Well, this is actually book. There's a theory on this dating back, in some cases, 100, 150 years. And I'm not going to challenge the theory because I don't know it. G3 seems a mistake, but I could be wrong. It just seems to be weakening the white king side. And that seems wrong simply because it shuts off this diagonal of A2 to G8. And it was at this point that black abandoned the game. It's the outcome is in doubt, but for whatever reason, sometimes life gets in the way and you just can't play chess. Let's look at their other game and see if there's anything worthwhile there. But they didn't have time to make a blunder based on fast time. The game just didn't last long enough. And 1 second and we'll get the other game. I think I passed it. Yeah, here it is. Okay, what happened here? Looks like a logically even position, and white just decided he couldn't play anymore. Usually it's not good to take knight takes on c6. It just strengthens the black pawn center. Now, how much of this is theory? The knight's got to go back, but now that doesn't seem right. But now this bishop's kind of entombed. A little bit of development, and white gave up the game. Uh, let's see, like I say, I don't know where theory ends. I don't know enough about this. Usually black will play e5 in that position. Now, maybe this is theory. Maybe you're supposed to take this knight and drive the knight back. Uh, but this is, like I say, this is your job. If you're gonna play this line as black, you need to be ready for it. And what better way to learn it than while playing online chess, while you learn while you go? That's what my course teaches. You can learn the openings when they count, rather than spending countless hours preparing an opening you may never play. Okay, so I'm going to stop the video here, get this one uploaded, then I'll figure out what other results come in, and I'll get another video as soon as I can. And I thank you so much for your time for watching. Take care.